fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, and it's quite the day. We have Magic Mike.
That's correct. I am here. Oh, you've seen those magic tricks. Yes.
Yeah. What are you doing? You know, I know that as you retire, you'll get into doing magic tricks, right?
Well, it's physical therapy on my 3 fingers that are numb, and so when I start doing it, it really actually helps out.
Yeah. And as long as you remember how to do it.
Yeah, that's why I record it. So then I go, oh, yeah, I did that one.
Yeah.
So
then you can also
being
edit
63 years old, it's I forget things.
It's really sad. You're the old guy at the station.
Only for a month or 2 more. That's it.
Yeah, June I turned that age, but you're still always older. Just remember that.
You're elder. Just remember that.
That's right. You respect your elders. And you just got back from the Dominican Republic, wasn't that where you were?
Yes. That's I'm still there mentally in that lazy river they have there.
Yeah.
So,
nice.
and you know what's strange, though? Every time I was in the pond, there was this purple dye around me. I don't know what that meant.
I could go a lot of places here, but I'm not. I'm just going to walk away.
I think Jerry knows what that is. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, I just want to add, isn't Magic Mike a male stripper?
Yeah, that's it. That's what but I always kind of take plays like that. See, because he does magic tricks on camera, and he does all that.
Yeah, and I strip away right to the good parts.
Yeah. And
nice segue. Excellent.
Yeah, he does them really well, but we call him Magic Mike. He would strip if he was about 30 years younger.
It has nothing to do with morality.
No, it's not. No.
Body fat.
Of course not.
Morality, no. So let's say we're going to get on to what we're talking about today. We have an author with us, and he's got a book out called Vanishing Act, crashed airliner, fake death, and backroom abortions. So Jerry Jamison, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm excited to meet you guys.
Before you get into the book and we talk about the book, let's talk about your history. It's the first time you've been on our show. So where is it that Jerry came from, and how did you get into the world of writing books?
Yeah, it's a long career. I started out as a surfer in Southern California. Then I became a hippie in a commune. I mean, that type.
Oh, Charles Manson, Spawn Ranch. Then
I went to seminary, and then I started an advertising agency. And for the last 40 years, I've had an advertising agency, and I was the chief writer. That was my key role in that agency. And just recently, I decided, well, first of all of our clients were like financial services type people, large national financial services. And in that industry, you can't promise anything. You can't say anything. You can't say this is good or great or okay, anything. So I spent my entire career not being able to use adjectives or adverbs or anything. And a designer would say you have 132 words, period, not 133. It's exactly how much you have to write. So I've eventually said, I'm going to just free myself, and I'm going to just use all the adjectives I can think of. So that's how I ended up here, and I equally write mystery novels, and I write nonfiction true crime.
I was going to say it's quite freeing. But the difference in crime fiction and when you're writing a true story, because I know I've done this myself, in the true stories, it's harder. How do I say this? You can't always get justice in truth, Like in nonfiction, a lot of times I've written stories and you talk to the killers and you do all these stuff, and it's not always the best outcome. It's not always justice. Whereas at least in fiction, you can kind of get, someone can get what they deserve. It's kind of.
Yeah, you're in control of that story. You know how it's going to end. You might know how it's going to end in true crime, but that doesn't mean it's not without struggle. By that I mean you're working through a life or lives of people that do heinous things, and yet you develop a certain affinity for those characters because, I spent day and night, 7 days a week for over a year with my assistant, Julia Estrada, researching this person who is virtually unknown. And, you grow close to these people, and it's a weird connection because you're digging deeper and deeper. As you do, you're trying to understand them. And then you reach points where they can't be understood. They're psychopaths. So it stops making sense. And, but it is part of the fascination of it, I think, that America has, that what happens to a mind when it goes down a path that you can't fathom.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, and when you do something like this is historical that you're writing about in Vanishing Acts, it's kind of, there's some history here. It's not just today.
Yes.
So that helps, for me anyway, it helps when I write things that are historical rather than today. For some reason, I do like going back in time. And do you do a lot of research in the historical parts? Because like if you're talking about the 40s and 50s and stuff, do you like to kind of create the atmosphere in the story? I'm
actually drawn to that. Even my fiction work is all in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, that kind of era. I find that a fascinating era, but especially when you're doing honest to goodness, hard research. I mean, you have to understand the political times, the economic times, the moral times, to understand, something that might not stand out today might have been devastatingly evil in 1930s. So you have to understand, you have to always put it in the context. So yeah, a lot of study of that and understanding it. But also it's what makes it really interesting, I think.
Yeah, that's what I find. I mean, if you're ever doing stories in the 30s, you can always call up Michael because he was probably in his 20s back in the 30s. So
I'm only a couple months older.
I rely on him regularly, so.
He lived it, so. Yeah, I always find I put myself back in the time, like I'm doing stuff from the 50s and 60s, and I watch a lot of old game shows or news clips and stuff on YouTube from that time to kind of get the feel of what they think is funny and what they don't and what's important, what isn't, how they dress. So I do things like that, but I'm a little bit crazy. So.
Interestingly enough, Al, this story came about during the time when I was, my agency years, and I wanted to do a campaign for a client that had a retro vintage feel to it. So what I did is I just bought a lot of old Life and magazines from the 1940s and 50s and 60s, and just, I'm going through what do they dress, what words do they use, what was the design style, the art style, what was the text, the copy like, just to really familiarize myself with art style primarily. And I turned a page in a Life magazine and it said, "Man downs airliner to fake death." And I saw that headline and I went, what is that? And that was the germ that started all of this.
That's crazy. But that's how it goes for me too. I'm in the same. I relate totally to that. So Vanishing Act, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the premise of it. What is the basic storyline that people are going to get out of this book?
Well, Dr. Robert Spears is the primary character. The story is about him. The cover is his picture. And he was the consummate con man. So his entire life was one giant fraudulent activity, a con, a scam. Virtually every minute of his life. He started when he was about 12 years old, and he does some things. He ends up in a reformatory in Oklahoma, and it really launches a life of crime for him. Now, to understand him a little bit, we talk about maybe there's a certain amount of empathy to understand his psyche. Robert Spears never knew his real name his entire life. There was never a time he knew what his name was because his mother, they were very poor, and his mother, let's say, had lots of boyfriends, and she would just move in with anybody and was always on the move. Anytime they would move, she would just change his name. He never knew his name from the beginning because from the beginning, she was always with a different man. So never his entire life did he know what his real name was, which I think tells us a little bit about it when you talk about a scammer or a con man who is constantly reinventing himself to be whatever he needs to be to accomplish his goal. And that was his lifetime, starting at age 12. It was one long consecutive series of crimes. He had 26 different aliases, known aliases that are on the penal records. I was able to obtain all of his penitentiary records. He was 12 times imprisoned in federal penitentiaries. He was arrested in 20 different cities and in Canada and America.
How many total years do you think, if you added that up, was he incarcerated?
I think almost 40.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's worth noting, too. He would get arrested. He would probably get like a 10-year sentence. He would generally serve no more than 2 years, sometimes less of that in the sentence. He was a model prisoner, I mean, almost beloved as a prisoner. He would be released. He would, within the first week of getting out, he was already, working on cons, working on scams. And he generally would meet somebody in prison, and then they'd both get out and they would form a partnership and start doing scams. And they were elaborate and they were brilliant, if you can say that, and they were highly successful and lucrative for him. He became, in the end, very wealthy.
So he was quite intelligent then.
Oh, yeah. There's something about him, and he was extremely charismatic, just extremely charismatic. In fact, when he was 17, he was sentenced by a judge. A judge, he had done something else. Again, he started at 12. By 17, he's already a veteran of prison system. And he goes before a judge, and the judge says, well, you have two choices. You can spend the next 5 years in Oklahoma State Prison, or you can join the Army and go fight overseas, and that was World War I. And he said, sure, I'll go do that. So he goes over there. He becomes an officer. He's decorated. He's highly successful. He's a sharpshooter. He just is he's everything. He's the all-American hero. And then he's eventually the war's over, and he's dropped off in San Francisco, and he meets someone almost immediately, the daughter of a wealthy socialite family in Oakland, very, very highly, high standing, high status in the Bay Area, and he scams them out of everything they have. They are homeless. Within a year or two, they are homeless. He has everything they owned. On top of that, his wife's sister is an invalid. She is confined to her bed. She has, I think, cystic fibrosis. And they can no longer care for her because they don't even have enough money to care for her anymore. And he has taken everything. And
Complete lack of remorse then.
Yeah, it's... he's a psychopath. He's a psychopath, but he's a charming psychopath. So he's a weird one. It's odd. I mean,
like Ted Bundy. I mean, maybe this guy named Al. I know. These guys are charming. So.
Oh no, I'm social.
All of this was up and down from BC to Seattle, then Portland and San Francisco. He was doing the whole West Coast at this point. He just works it, and then as soon as, people are starting to close in on him, he goes to another city, he has a new name, he completely recreates himself, starts all over again. I mean, within days, he's back at it.
Yeah, he's back in Buffalo. So what kind of a doctor was he? I mean, when we say Dr. Robert Spears, was he actually a medical doctor or?
Well, he was a fake doctor.
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah. So, he, at some point later in his career, I mean, I think he was in his late 50s by this time, he purchased a diploma. I think it's a Duke University diploma, and he just purchases a copy of it, has his name put on it. Then he goes, that was in Ohio, I think, where he settled. Then he goes over to Maryland, and for $500, he purchased a medical license out of a trunk of a guy. The guy who's selling the medical license was the head psychiatrist of the project for the atomic bomb. We just recently saw the whole movie on all of that stuff in New Mexico. Well, he was the on-staff psychiatrist. He became angry with the federal government, so to get back, he started selling medical licenses. So he buys a medical license in Maryland, and he determines there's one state in the United States where you can transfer your medical license without having to be recertified or licensed again, and that's Texas. And so he does his research, and he says, I'm going to move to Texas. And again, he has no training, no medical background at all. And he basically sets up shop as an OBGYN. And I was able to obtain his actual advertising in the Dallas Morning News, the ads he's running. And in the ads, he has a regular clinic. He's got a clinic on a main street in town in Dallas, in a nice exclusive part of Dallas. And he advertises, he handles female issues. And that's the phrase he uses, I handle female issues. And that was code for abortions. So that's who he attracted. And he attracted very wealthy men who had very pregnant secretaries. These were Dallas oilmen. They paid at the time, so this is in the 50s, $5,000 per abortion. Today's money is about 10 times that. So he had a mansion in an exclusive neighborhood. He had a society wife. He had 2 beautiful children. He was living a perfect life. He was a doctor. He was well received. But I think one of the things that we see, and I think there are parallels to today, where online people can create entire personas, which are not only not accurate, don't need to be proven. It's basically what he did. He just created a persona, and people said, well, if he lives in a house like that, he's got to be legit. If he drives a car like that, he's got to be legit. If he's got a wife and children like that, he most definitely has got to be legit. And he wasn't legit at all. He had no medical training, and they just go in the back room of his clinic and do the abortions. And he would 7, 8, 9 a day for abortions for years.
So do you think his family had any idea of what was going on, or were they involved, or were they just totally blind to everything?
Well, his wife all along, and I should say, by all accounts, he loved his wife and he loved his children. Genuinely, authentically, and truly. And I say that because I was able to get a hold of letters that they exchanged when he was away at different times. And they are love letters. He just, he can barely stand to be away from her. She maintained to the very end, I knew nothing about any of this. Nothing at all. I would say that's questionable, to be honest with you. Now, it would be true, I would think, in the 1950s that it'd be very possible that a wife might say, we read about this with mafia wives all the time. I knew he was in the trash collection business. Knew he was in this, but, I didn't ask any questions. And I would say probably a 50s housewife type of an approach. I didn't ask questions. He was a doctor. We did garden parties in the backyard. I'm not asking questions. I think she knew, though. I do think she knew.
You would think, and well, the thing that really sticks out to me is maybe not so much what he was doing in his doctor office, like with abortions and stuff, but what about the plane? What about that plane incident that he had with the missing plane and stuff? Well, that seemed a little extreme to me. What was that all about?
Well, she's very much involved in that, though, again, she will maintain every bit of this was a mystery and a surprise to her. But the plane incident is the capper of a life of crime. And this is where it shifts from, I think, first of all, let me say, with Dr. Spears, there's a little bit of a kind of a Robin Hood element in this. When I'm researching it, I think when people are reading it, he enjoyed stealing from people that were too rich and too dumb to not give away their money. So there's this element that it's like, if you're stupid enough to give me your money. I'm going to take it. And he made his entire career on that until we get to the point we're going to talk about now. And then it's unconscionable what happens after that. And we see too in and I would guess this is true of many con artists, self-preservation and greed are the two driving factors in his life. Just greed, just wants money. And so he is actually very successful in Dallas, very successful, but he hears that the big business is in Southern California, the big business is in Hollywood. And so he moves his family out. They have a home overlooking the Pacific Ocean, beautiful home. And he moves his family there, and he forms a partnership with another man named Don Loomis. And Don Loomis is a doctor also, and they go into a partnership. Now, that partnership is actually for abortions, but on the surface, it's a medical partnership. But Don Loomis was the on-staff abortionist for MGM Studios. He was their fitness guru, but in reality, he performed abortions. And according to my research, he performed over 5,000 abortions for MGM.
Wow. 5,000.
And I should say this, because I worked many years on another book about an actress that was during the golden age of cinema. And I kept reading, the movie magazines, of which in the 1940s there were dozens and dozens and dozens. And they repeatedly refer to an epidemic of appendicitis among young actresses. And I came across a memo, an MGM memo, that says an appendectomy is the code word for abortion. So these actresses were all having appendectomies, and Don Loomis was doing them all. So our guy, Dr. Spears, joins forces with Don Loomis, feeling like, this is going to be very lucrative going forward. We're going to join forces. There's more work than what one man can do. But Dr. Spears makes a mistake, and he performs an abortion in a seaside motel for a young woman, and she's a UCLA student. And in most of these cases, there was a wealthy man behind these procedures, paying for these procedures. But in this case, she had a boyfriend who was just another student at UCLA who dearly loved her. And the only reason they were having that procedure, aside from the societal embarrassment of it all, I mean, obviously this was a different era, but the reason they wanted is because they wanted to both stay in school, and she would not be able to continue school if she got pregnant. Well, he almost kills her, and the boyfriend rushes her to UCLA medical clinic, to the hospital, and up to this point, no one has ever reported him. No one has ever, because if a woman reports that she was involved in abortion, she goes to prison. She goes to prison if she says, I was having an abortion. So nobody would ever report it to the police. But this guy did. And this guy, as soon as they get to the hospital, he calls up the police and said, I will give you his name. I'll give you his address. I'll give you all of his contact information. This guy's a butcher. And they arrest him virtually on the spot. I mean, virtually red-handed, because he's almost killed this girl. So now he's arrested. He is out on bail, but he's going to be tried in a couple of weeks. During this time, he calls up his very best friend. Now, his best friend's name is Al Taylor. Al Taylor lives in Tampa, Florida. And I need to put this in context because it's really important. They had been close friends for 40 years. By that, I mean dear friends, close friends. Their families vacationed together. They were very, very close friends. And he said, let me meet you in Tampa. I have a business opportunity in Dallas. I'm going to straighten out this, legal issue I have, because he'd always been able to do that. Let's meet in Tampa, and I'm going to share this business opportunity I have with you. They meet in the coffee shop. I mean, it's well documented. The waitresses remember them well. They met in the coffee shop of the airport, Tampa International Airport. Al says, well, I'm going to drive to Dallas, I'll meet you. Dr. Spears says, well, I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to fly there, I'll meet you. And then at the last minute, according to court records, Al Taylor says, oh, my neck is so sore. I was in a car accident a couple. My neck is just killing me. And Dr. Spears says, well, you know what? Let me drive your car. I don't mind doing a road trip. You take my plane ticket. Now, in the 1950s, you could do that. You could just hand your plane ticket to somebody else. So he hands the plane ticket to his best friend, dear friend, and says, the only thing I'm going to ask is I've got this package. This is like a brown parcel wrapped package, and it's got cash in it. So don't lose it, because when you get to Dallas, just go right to my house. My wife's expecting you. This is cash. She needs this cash. And I won't be there for several days. Not a problem. He gets on the plane. Plane takes off, and 22 minutes later, the entire plane explodes over the Gulf of Mexico. Everyone's lost, and the plane sinks so deep that it was never able to be recovered, and to this day, it's never been recovered.
It was best friend.
And I am not exaggerating how close these two were. Very, very close. And he blew up his friend, and he blew up 43 people flying on a red-eye flight from Tampa to Dallas.
Initially, did they think it was the doctor?
And yes, and that's the whole purpose. I mean, his name is on the manifest. And so if you think about, say, a plane crash today or any, catastrophe, the next day in the newspapers, all of a sudden you see the names of all the people, and you start getting the human interest stories that are connected to them. This couple was just married 3 hours earlier, and they got on this plane. This couple was flying to Dallas to meet their grandchild for the first time. All these little stories come out, and sure enough, Dr. Spears is one of them. Renowned OBGYN, was on the plane, highly respected doctor. He was one of the ones that died on the crash. And right then in the Los Angeles Police Department, the guy who was in charge of his case, the guy who arrested him in L.A., said, oh, my God, he died on that plane. My guy is supposed to be in court in 1 week, and he died on that plane. What are the chances? And almost immediately he said, I'm not sure I believe this. This is too coincidental. But no police did anything about it. There was really no one thought anything about it. And from a research standpoint, I think, Al, you'll appreciate this because of the research element. As we're going through the newspaper accounts, you see all these glowing things about this man who was on this plane and the tragedy that he died. And we're going to find out he did not die, So you watch the newspaper reports, they slowly morph into something different as you go. But each day of the paper is, the story is starting to evolve, which makes it really interesting. But let me just tell you what happened. I mean, how something began to happen. Al Taylor, as you recall, was the real guy on the plane. He was the one that took the brown paper package. Well, he never goes home to his wife that night. And she goes, where's my husband? How come he didn't come back? Somebody says, well, where was he? And she says, well, he was meeting his best friend at the Tampa International Airport. They were going to have lunch together in the coffee shop. And that's the last time anybody saw him. And she goes to the police and says, something's not right here. Tomorrow's my son's birthday. He would never miss our son's birthday. Never. There is no situation where he would do that. Something has happened, and all I know is the last guy he was talking to was this Dr. Spears. The police just blow it off completely. Yeah, you didn't have a good marriage. He probably took off. He's probably in Mexico. He ran off with another woman. I mean, they completely dismiss her. Until 3 days later, in the mail, her son gets a brown paper envelope addressed to her son and opens it, and it's a life insurance policy from Mutual of Omaha. And for your listeners that remember the 1950s, in those days, in an airport, you could buy flight insurance in a vending machine. So all you had to do, if they were freestanding little kiosks, you walked over, all it took was quarters, like 7 quarters. Put in 7 quarters, you got the equivalent of $100,000 worth of flight insurance. And people remember in the airport, well, there was this man that got on the plane, and just minutes before the plane took off, he came running out of the plane, ran through the terminal, and bought insurance right here at this kiosk. Filled it out, made his son the beneficiary, slipped it right back in the slot in the kiosk, and got back on the plane. And his wife said, why would he ever buy flight insurance? He wasn't flying anywhere. And that's what started to break the case open.
And Spears' wife, now, how could she not know about any of it if he's not dead? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think you had asked earlier, just maybe about the person himself, Dr. Spears. He was willing to let his wife and children believe he was dead, allowed them to be in agony, and they were just devastated, his family. In fact, when he drove that car across the South, he drove to Dallas. He knew the plane had blown up. It was on all the stations. It was everywhere. And he drove to his house and parked across the street from his home to watch neighbors coming bringing hot dishes to his wife. And he could see the silhouette in the picture window and his kids sobbing and crying. And he just sat there and watched them. So he allowed her for months and months and months to believe he was dead. And she was in mourning. She was devastated.
So he eventually got arrested for this down the road. Did he let the wife know before he was arrested or caught what happened, that he was still alive?
Yes. So actually his downfall eventually will be that he loved his wife so much and his children. The irony of this is, it's not that he killed 43 people. I mean, that's not on his conscience. It's that he feels bad that he can't see his wife. So he's holed up in a little hideaway in Arizona, about an hour or so outside of Phoenix. And he's there with another abortionist, and he's already set up shop again. The two, they're already doing it all over again. They have a steady stream of clients from Phoenix and Los Angeles. And he starts to get this pang in his heart that he misses his wife. And so he sends this other guy to go knock on the door of his wife and said, someone needs to talk to you. She said, I don't need to talk to anybody. I'm in mourning. I lost my husband 2 or 3 months ago. I'm in mourning. He said, no, you really are going to want to talk to this person. And she said, I really don't want to. And he goes, believe me, here's the key to room, 203 at the such and such motel. Trust me, go there. She goes there, she unlocks the door, she opens it, and her husband is standing there alive. I always wondered what that moment would be. I mean, did she go up and just pound on his chest? Did she slap him? Did she hug him and kiss him? I don't know. We don't know. And from that point on, she knows he's alive, so now she's complicit in it. And that's why her denial all along that I never knew anything, you just really have to question, because at that point, she knew. And she knew what he had done. And she just lays low. In the meantime, the FBI are very involved. So J. Edgar Hoover calls a press conference, calls him, this is our number one target. We're going to find this guy. He downed an airliner. We're going to find him. Now the FBI they're just all over this case. And out in this hideaway, his buddy that he's staying with in this hideaway, and in the book, there are all the pictures of every single character, every single situation. There's 30, 35 photographs that are, really tell the story. But this guy notices, there's a whole lot of black cars driving back and forth in front of my house day and night. And he puts it together and says, the FBI is going to arrest me. So he waits till Spears goes into Phoenix to pick up some stuff. He's staying at a motel while he gets some things. And he calls the FBI, turns in his buddy, and says, you're going to find him in this motel. That's where he's staying. You want to get him, just, leave me out of it. And this scene is straight out of a Hollywood cinematic, epic production. He's up in his room. The lobby of that motel, which still exists today, by the way, that lobby of that motel is completely filled with FBI agents. So they're dressed as tourists. They got cameras around their neck. They got Hawaiian shirts. They got black socks and shoes. shorts. You know, they're reading newspapers. They're sitting at the motel bar having drinks, and Spears comes sprinting down the stairs. He's got a suitcase in each hand, which, as it turns out, is full of money, both of them. He has called a taxi. The taxi's out in front, past the double glass doors. The taxi's is running. The guy's behind the steering wheel. The back door is open. The trunk is open. Spears comes sprinting through the lobby, throws the suitcases in the trunk, and dives into the back seat of the taxi. And the FBI guys leap into action, and they grab a hold of his legs. So they're holding his legs. He's yelling, "Go, go, 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 go," to the taxi driver, who takes off, in the car, jets out of there. They're dragging the FBI agents as they hold on to his legs as they're trying to pull him out of the taxi. And they eventually get him out, and the car goes away. They find out the taxi he had prepaid to go to Mexico. And they caught him at the last possible second.
So I wonder how he found out.
Who?
Him. I mean, was he just aware that the FBI's around? I mean, for him to run, he knew the jig was up, right?
Yeah. All of a sudden, there started to be clues. He called his friend. His friend didn't want to talk to him. It's almost like it got too silent. Everything got too silent. Nobody was talking. And he thought, oh my God, something's happening. It was just you have to keep in mind, you guys are familiar with Catch Me If You Can movie with Tom Hanks and Leonardo?
Right, yes.
Yeah, very similar to that. There was one lieutenant, LAPD lieutenant, by the name of Lieutenant Zander, who made it his one mission in life to find this guy. And he was, throughout his career, he would just miss him, He was right here, and I just missed him. And this would be the time when he caught him. This would be the time. So I think he was just sensing. I think he had an incredible intuition of when I need to get out of town, just like in that movie. I got to get out now. I have to climb out a window this minute. And the guy'd walk in, and this, a cigarette's still burning, and there's still coffee, and it's like, oh my God, he's that good. But this time, he gets caught.
Yeah. Wow.
But he does not. They can never put together a case that he blew up this plane. And the FBI is going crazy because they're trying to put together the case to try him, and they can't. So he is eventually arrested and sentenced for transporting a stolen car across state lines. And he is given 5 years, and he goes to prison in California, Terminal Island. And he, he's happy. I'm great in prison. It literally is not a problem for him. He's there. He's doing fine. He serves all 5 years of his sentence, and he is released. They open, just like in the movies, right? He's got the cheap suit on. The gates go open. He walks out. He takes 2 steps into freedom, and Lieutenant Zander arrests him for the original abortion charge way back. And this time he gets 10 years for that. And he is sent to Alcatraz, and he becomes a friend of the Birdman of Alcatraz.
Got to be a movie. This has to be a movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's such a story. So he serves most of his time. He's eventually released. He's transferred to Springfield, Missouri prison, and he's eventually released on a humanitarian release. But after about 8 years, I think, that he had served. By this time, he's like, I don't know, he's 65, 68 years old or something like that. He's released, and what does he do? He goes to Dallas. He rents a small little flophouse apartment, and he spends the rest of his life, which is going to only be a couple of years, just standing in the shadows so he can see his wife and children. He just goes where he knows they're going to be. He never contacts them again. She remarries. He just stands in the shadows to watch them. And it's how he ends his life, basically. Just forlorn, sad, not penitent, not guilt or shame or any of that. Just lonely for his wife and children.
So did they have to pay that back, the insurance money?
So she gets in a boatload of trouble because when he's declared dead, she gets, a lot of life insurance. And she's always like, well, I didn't know, until they found out she did know. And now she's in a boatload of trouble too. Now they basically say, your life is so screwed up. If you just return the money or what's left of the money, we'll be okay with that. And I should tell you that, so most of this comes from, this is based on well over 1,000 newspaper articles that my assistant and I read, typed up, cataloged, inventoried, and recreated his entire life. So all of this. However, in the course of my research, in the Freedom of Information Act, I was able to obtain the actual FBI records and interviews for everything, and that's over 1,000 pages of interviews of everybody connected with his life, and discovered just phenomenal stuff. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, you say it's, this should be a movie, and it should, but the depth and the layers are just mind-boggling, because the FBI finds out so much stuff, not just about him, but about abortion in America and the abortion rings and how it works. And it's a huge, huge story, independent of the plane crash, independent of all of his 40 years of conning people. Just what the FBI finds out about corruption in the police department, corruption in the legal system, the role of abortion in America in the 1950s, because basically, and this is interesting, the judges in America said, maybe a little bit like prostitution, this is wrong, this is immoral, but society has to have this. It's going to exist in society. It's not going to go away. So the best thing we can do is just to try to manage it. And they find out. So some of the most highly placed people in America are involved in this. Something.
So how did you make this less than 400,000 words? You've got everything going on in this.
Yeah, the book is almost exactly cut in half from what I wrote. The publisher is like, yeah, it's this many words. I'm like, yeah, but there's this story. Cut it. Cut it.
That's how it goes. Yeah, they only go so far.
Yeah. It's funny too. It'd be like, the book can't weigh more than this because shipping costs when you ship a thing. Really? I just poured my whole life into this and we're down to ounces? Is that what we're...
Yeah, do a second.
But I should say I do appreciate the publisher. Bloomsbury, this is a division of Bloomsbury. Bloomsbury is the original publishers of Harry Potter. So it's a very big London-based. And they were the very first publisher to ever publish Agatha Christie. So it's quite an honor, really.
Let's see, Harry Potter, is that a book?
I think it's 2 books.
Oh, I'll have to look for it. Maybe it's worth a read.
It's Potter, Harry.
Okay, I'll look for it.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. Well, listen, so at the end of the day, how do you feel about everything? Just going through a process like this, all the research and then finding out things and then writing about people and, because you do get involved. You do have to characterize yourself in the position of the different people and what they're going through in order to understand them and that stuff. So at the end of the day, when you finished all this, now the book's out, how do you think it's changed you?
Well, it has affected me. There's no doubt about it. And affected my wife because she's like, you really changed during this process. Because I was so deep into not only his life, but he had 26 different aliases. So there was no chronology of his life. It's not like if there was a thing in the encyclopedia on his name, it would say it started here and it ended here. But that's not how it was. It was more like, here's a name we found in North Carolina, and I cross-referenced that to the Alcatraz records. And then I also found it in the Maryland State Penitentiary. And, when they talked about this crime, this is actually Dr. Spears doing this. But it's a different name, a different place, and complete. So it was such an ever-evolving thing that, I was completely immersed in it. And I would say that it took some time to extricate myself from the story because he became so real to me. I mean, it became very alive to me. And I mean, there are parts of it we haven't got into now and probably don't have time, but, there are children involved. There are, wives and children and brothers and sisters. And each of those have stories as well. I mean, this was not a pristine world that he was at. Al Taylor's son, you remember who Al Taylor is, the guy that died. His son turns out to be one of the most famous art forgers in American history. Completely independent of this whole story, he ends up in Los Angeles as a world-famous art forger and ends up spending the rest of his life in prison. I mean, he has famous paintings right now in major galleries all around the world because he was actually an excellent painter. But he made all his money on forgeries. There's no end to the story, and all of that is to say, emotionally, you kind of get wrapped up in all this. Like, how does this world exist? It's like a shadow world to the real world, and yet, I have headlines where, like I said, it says, "Man downs airliner to fake death." He blew up an airliner, everybody in it, just so his name would be on the manifest. That's it. That's the reason.
With his best friend.
With his best friend, and I tell you, they were so close. Loved each other. But he self-preservation and greed. And nothing was more important to him.
He'd be in government today if he was...
Don't get me going.
Well, yeah. Well, it's a pretty amazing story. And we're glad you came by and tell us everything and kind of give us a little rundown on what's going on. Yeah. Listen, do you guys, or do you like to have fans interact with you do you have a website, social media, a lemonade stand? Where do you like people to come find you?
Yeah, I do have a website. It's jerryjamison.com. So Jamison's Jamison. But I welcome any comments. I welcome you can contact me through there. I love interacting on this story, and I have found, as this book has gone out, made its rounds, and is doing well, everybody has so many questions. I mean, it's not the kind of thing that you read the book and say, "Wow, that was fascinating," and then you just close the book. It's more like it generates hundreds of other questions. What happened here? What about them? And I think the psyche of the man, people want to know, I need to know more about this person. And there's a lot to know about him. So,
oh, yeah.
I welcome any of your listeners to contact me.
Well, maybe Jerry will contact you himself from the other side. Maybe he's not really dead.
If anybody could, between him and Alice.
Well, we're going to have all your information up on our website as well, so people can find you and the book. And get out there and pick it up. The Vanishing Act. Jerry Jamison, thank you.
Thank you so much. You did. You had great questions, both of you, and I appreciate it.
Nice speaking with you.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.